How do children think about groups? Learning outcomes. After reading this chapter, you'll be able to describe how children think and behave differently in groups, explain the roles of collaboration, self-identity, and categorization in creating and sustaining groups, understand how group differences can be reduced via intergroup contact, cooperation, and empathy. Introduction. Almost all animals give preferential treatment to a special kind of group called the family. Much of this bias can be explained by how genetically related one individual is to another. The closer two individuals are on the family tree, the more likely they are to share the same genes. Thus, close family members helping one another out are genes helping one another out. This led evolutionary biologist John GarDjinn, when asked, "Would you give your life to save a drowning brother?" to quip, "No, but I would save 2 brothers or 8 cousins." Connolly and Matthew, 1999, page 10. Because we share half of our genes on average with brothers and 1/8 with cousins. Haldane was giving the numbers of relatives he would have to save to break even. The link between moral behavior and kin relations is also captured in an ancient Arab proverb. I against my brother against our cousin, my brother, my cousin, and I against the world, quoted in Genesis 2007, page 21. Humans, however, more than any other species, care deeply about all kinds of groups that are both bigger and smaller than the family unit. Nations, communes, cults, gangs, clubs, sports teams, political parties, friendships, cliques, unions, societies, fellowships, religions, music groups, pressure groups, volunteer groups, the magic circle, the inner circle, the in-group, the out-group. It's us versus them. If you're not with us, you're against us. Something more than genetic relatedness is going on here. Groups are all around us, and a major part of growing up is finding your tribe, becoming initiated into it and caring for it. But where does all this groupiness come from? How do children develop multiple group identities? And is there anything we can do to overcome the dark side of our groupish nature? Groupishness. The groupish side of our human nature sits so near the surface that it can be summoned into life almost absurdly easy. In a classic demonstration, Henry Tajfel and his colleague Michael Billing divided people into 2 groups on the basis of a coin toss, Group A and Group B. Following this, each participant went into a cubicle where they were told they could award real money to other participants. Group A gave more money to other Group A members, and Group B gave more to other Group B members, even though they knew their groups were randomly created. Billing and Tajfel, 1973. The researchers found that just dividing people into groups on an arbitrary basis produced in-group favoritism, the tendency to think of and act more positively towards people from our in-group than we do to people from out-groups. In the 50 years of research since the initial finding, in-group favoritism has been widely replicated in a range of cultural contexts, and it is one of the most robust findings in social psychology. It doesn't matter whether people are divided randomly by the colour of their t-shirts, how they perceive dots on the screen, or their art preferences. We know people think and behave radically differently to members of their own group than they do to outsiders. People are more willing to share, cooperate with an in-group members relative to out-group members. Gartner and Dovidio 2000. They emphasize more with the in-group than the out-group. Sigara et al. 2011. In-group members are rated as having more positive characteristics such as trustworthiness, honesty, loyalty, and attractiveness. Brewer, 1979. People experience pleasure in response to out-group failures. Schadenfreude, and displeasure in response to their triumphs. Glucksmines, Sika et al. 2014. And people remember more positive than negative information about in-groups than out-groups. Are more critical of performance of the out-group, and in final tragic irony, believe that their own groups are less prejudiced than the outgroups. Shelton and Richardson, 2005. All this judgment from something as random as a coin toss. The arbitrariness which with this as them thinking can be generated would be a comical with the implication not so tragic. It shows how groups can exist simply because individuals perceive those groups as existing. Even in cases where there is no underlying difference, such as race, we are still prone to perceiving us and them and still demonstrate in-group favoritism. These results offer a sobering view of how even the shallowest of group identities can produce prejudice and discrimination. Jackson et al. 2019. When combined with a dehumanization of the outgroup, groupishness takes on a particularly dark side, motivating xenophobia and outgroup hate. And if the in-group is the nation state or an ethnic group, then it could be argued that outgroup denigration has been pivotal in justifying some of the darkest episodes of human history, including genocide and war. Henry Tajfel himself had more than a casual interest in intergroup discrimination. At the outbreak of the Second World War, as a Polish Jew, he volunteered to fight in the French army, but he was taken as a prisoner of war by the Nazis. On his return home, he discovered that none of his immediate family and a few of his friends had survived the Holocaust. The in-group bias seems universal. In the language of the Dinka people living in the deserts of Sudan, Dinka simply means people. The implication being that people who are not Dinka are not people. In the language of the Yupik people, spoken by inhabitants of Siberian tundra, Yupik means real people. the implication being that people are not yuppic are not real people. Children want to be part of the in-group. They are busy adopting the languages, customs, rites, rituals, and dress of those around them. So it should come to as no surprise that they show in groups a favoritism from an early age to, for example, 10 months old would rather play with a toy that has been played with by another in a group member than an out-group member. Kisler et al. 2012. 17 months olds have an expectation in-group members will help one another out, but not out-group members. GarDjinn 2017. 4 years old express greater liking for in-group than out-group members. Expect others in-group members to share their preferences and trust them more. McDonald et al. 2019. Richter et al. 2016. 4 to 5 years old are more loyal to their in-group, more willing to keep secrets, and more willing to pay a personal cost for the benefit of their in-group. Mish et al. 2016. 5 years old will stay silent when an in-group member commits an immoral action, but are more likely to tell someone else when they're an out-group member does it. Mitch et al. 2018. 5 to 6 years old reported greater liking for national and ethnic in-group members compared to individuals whose national or ethnic identity is different from their own. McLaughlin et al. 2018. 3 to 7-year-olds show greater generosity towards in-group members than out-group members. Fur et al. 2008. All of these listed studies took place under controlled experimental conditions, but the same biases have been demonstrated more naturalistically in the field. Most famously in the Robbers Cave study conducted by Muzaffer Sharif, a Turkish-American social psychologist, 1956. In this study, 22 boys aged 11 years old were brought to a mock summer camp in Oklahoma and divided into 2 teams, the Eagles and the Rattlers. The teams were separated and they were only interacted when they were competing in various activities. Over the time that they were at the camp, the 2 teams showed increasing hostility towards each other, which eventually escalated into violence. During a cooling off period, the boys were encouraged to list features of the 2 groups, which, as you might expect by now, were described in favourable teams regarding their in-group and unfavourable regarding the out-group. Later on, when Sharif encouraged the groups to work towards a common goal, there was some reduced tension and prejudice between the groups. More on this later. There were problems with the original research, including the fact that the boys were exposed to a harsh environment at the camp, which may have made them more competitive, anxious, and aggressive to begin with. That said, Sharif's study offers an important demonstration that conflict can gravitate around group identity. Figure 8.1. Figure 8.1 left, some of the boys from the Robbers Cave study. Right, one boy holds up the Rattlers' motto, Eagles, you may win. But we will give you a hell of a fight, source. Key points. Children think and behave more positively towards the in-group compared to the out-group. Why are we so groupish? Why do children want to be part of the in-group? As with most behaviours, there are 2 ways of answering this question. Let's take a long-term view first. In the previous chapter, we came across the idea that at the same some point in human evolution, the only way we could have survived was by hunting and foraging for food collaboratively, whereby people have to work hard together to bring down a large animal, to fish, or to collect honey. For example, Engelman and Tomasello, 2019. This has turned out had some interesting consequences for how children think about fairness and respect. The basic point is that when our survival becomes dependent on other people, we become particularly good at reading others. Intentions, Chapter 3. I'm interested in what others think of us. We saw in the previous chapter how children are adept at managing their reputation. We also became choosy over whom we collaborate with, as we don't want to be stuck with someone who doesn't pull their weight or won't return a favour. We also saw in the previous chapter how judgmental and selective children can be in the collaborative context. We do not care about just any other people, though. We care about the same people that we regularly encounter, as those are the ones that are most opportunities to help or harm us. For most of human history, we have been living in small groups of 150 or so, in which people could cooperate with us through sharing tasks and aiding each other in times of need.